Not a huge amount of updates, if I'm perfectly honest, other than that the weather's not quite as nice as I would like it to have been down here in Bradenton. Work's been very decent. The players are in a very good place. Everyone's in good spirits, and we can at this point certainly say that the pre-season's been very worthwhile.
I think, Gary, we'll start with Drake Hills from the Tennessean and work our way down. Go ahead, Drake.
Good afternoon, Gary.
Hi, Drake.
I know you started it off by saying that it's basically just been chipping away at preseason and not much of an update. I'm wondering, is that just an internal thing, or is there an update externally on when you guys are going to begin in preseason play? I know you guys got that open slot on Friday. I was wondering if there's a team in that slot yet.
No, unfortunately not. The scheduled game for us, unfortunately, is is a non-event now, and we'll make sure that day is utilised. Within the group, we'll try and make best use of it, as much use obviously as we can, and finish the 2 weeks off on a decent note. But yeah, the game that we had penciled in is won't happen now.
Next, we'll go to Ben Wright. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Gary, I mean, obviously preseason is kind of split into two different trips to Florida. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how much of the first kind of part of preseason you use to kind of get guys back up to fitness. What's the balance between getting everybody up to fitness and then trying to work on actual in-game concepts?
Yeah, look, the first couple of weeks, I think for most people is evaluating the group. It's not just how fit they are. It's really getting back into the swing of things with the group. Their bodies readjusting again to the sort of workload that is going to be expected of them, and predominantly we can control that if we don't have any games against other teams. It doesn't stop us competing against one another in inter-squad games, but it's just very difficult to keep a lid on what the guys will and won't and can't do or shouldn't do if they play against other teams, and the risk of injury then is obviously that much greater. So we certainly want to make sure that when we come back down for the second part of our pre-season in Florida, that we just, at that point, the players are comfortable, their bodies are comfortable. We're putting them at less risk physically, and we can also concentrate more on what are our preparations, team shape, and general look of the group towards the start of the season. What is that going to be like as we start to unfold and play what will be 4 games in that second period?
Thanks, Coach. Next, we'll go to Drake Hills at the Tennessean. Go ahead, Drake.
Yeah, Gary, just to follow up on the preseason schedule. Obviously, going back to last year, it was almost like you guys had to jump through 2 or 3 hoops and to adjust the schedule on the fly. Did that have an impression on when you scheduled out these first couple of weeks for phase 1 and the goals that you wanted to get done, whether that be fitness, whether that be installing some technical work, some tactical work in there? What does that map look like compared to last year?
We're in a totally different place, I would say, at this point, Drake. Last year, I think it's branded in most people's brains as to what happened and the difficulties that we endured. To this point, I'm, as I said at the opening stages of this interview, I'm really pleased with where the guys are at. They came in good shape. We've, progressed from that point, and had some competitive 11v11 work yesterday for the very first time over a slightly prolonged period. Delighted in what I saw and how the players came through it, so that's a nice hurdle to jump. But generally, you know, the hope is that, you know, we can have a much more fulfilling pre-season than we did last year. When I look back at what we were able to competitively achieve in pre-season, it was very, very little. And even into that final weekend where, you know, there was a Titan Stadium where there was a difficulty, you know, even in the that final pre-season game. Look, we can only hope that ourselves and other teams that we're playing against don't have any problems. Unfortunately, the first game we had penciled in, there were, and you know, we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hold our breath that the rest of the pre-season will run smoothly.
Next, we'll go with Tim Sullivan. Go ahead, Tim.
Gary, you just mentioned having a little bit of a 11-on-11 scrimmaging. When you guys do that at this pretty early stage of the preseason, are you putting guys with the players that they'll play next to on the field to develop the relationships, or are you kind of mixing guys around to experiment and see, you know, maybe get some evaluations of guys that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get if they were, you know, playing with different personnel?
In the early stages, Tim, it is more about trying to, you know, trying to work through those relationships. You know, we've got some new bodies that have come into the group, some senior and experienced, others that are obviously just out of college. The game yesterday was a mixed bag, and the teams were, you know, likewise. There wasn't any set theme to what went on other than, you know, the type of shape that we might want to look at and some of the fundamentals within that. And, you know, as I've said, it is very, very early. As long as the players are moving in a positive direction physically, keeping them healthy, making sure every day there's something to take out of it, you know, we get that much closer, a step nearer to, you know, what we're all preparing for, which is the opening fixture.
Thank you, Coach. Next, we'll go to Claudio Villalobos. Claudio?
Gary, I'm curious about the international competition for those three guys, of course, Walker, Randall, and Anibal this weekend already. How much of a concern there is? It's a bigger concern from you, those guys competing right now when they should be in preseason. How different that is from the time when they are called up during the regular season when their competition level is higher. Thank you.
Well, there are actually some positives in this. The positives are that these guys went into camp quite a bit earlier than the group we currently have here. That means obviously that their workload has you know, been increased to a point where they can compete at an international level this weekend. So there's no worries about where they're at from a purely physical standpoint. The fact that they're working with other international players, you know, we should all expect that it's a very high standard and that those guys are more than ready for their return when it happens, which will be at the end of next week. The downside is an obvious one. There's always that worry there might be an issue with the players. So, you know, every game that they're involved in, you know, my heart normally skips a beat, like most other coaches, I'm sure, that they come back safely and in good health. You know, aside that, the actual preparations and the three guys we're talking about have been around the group from day one of our inaugural season. You know, two of them are extremely experienced players, and in Randall's case, you know, he's been almost an ever-present in the team since the team started. Would I like him to be here and prepare for the season? Of course. I think that's an ideal world. Are we going to lack or miss anything with them not being here? I don't think whatever we miss, it's going to be huge. And we will still have 3 weeks with those guys to prepare for the Seattle game. So at this point, I'm just hopeful that the games go well for them. The guys are successful in their own games and how they play, and they come back healthy.
Thank you, Coach. We'll go back to Tim Sullivan for Club and Country. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, that answer kind of made me kind of curious about another thing, which is when you guys get Walker, Randall, Anibal back from their national teams, what sort of data do you guys get fitness-wise? Do you kind of monitor and say, okay, we've got to catch you up to where we were if they kind of have fallen behind with that? What sort of, do you guys get all the sports bra information from them? What sort of data do you guys share with the national team?
The national teams that you're talking about are very, very accommodating. The information comes out in most cases really quickly. So we have a good idea, or in fact a very clear idea of not just their match data, but of course the period of time that they've been there, what sort of rest they've had, and what sort of workload they've been through in the time that they've been away. At this point in the season, as I've just said, the likelihood is those guys are in great shape. They're getting ready for, 2-3 games that they're playing across this next few days. So I think the actual mindset when they come back in is not so much do they need more work and are they behind the group. It's normally that, especially at this time of the year, how long have they been away? Looking at what their calendar looked like over Christmas into the new year. How long have they been away from their family? How much work have they done? And the reality for them is there an opportunity for me to, give them an extra day or two around their family, because they will have been away for a long time and they're going to come away with us again for 2 weeks. So it's just managing that really. But, the international groups are very, very good with the information that they send out to us.
Next, we'll go to Ben Wright at Broadway Sports Media. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Gary, earlier you mentioned a couple of the college guys. I was just curious how it's been seeing Ahmed in training so far. What have you seen from him this early on?
Do you know what? Not dissimilar to an awful lot of other college guys as they make that transition and step from college soccer to the pro ranks. From a personality standpoint, always lovely to meet these individuals. Ahmed in particular, great lad, lovely personality, intelligent boy, looks very keen and hungry to learn. So that's obviously a real positive point. He's been able to deal with the workload physically. In fact, that area of his world, I think, is one of the assets in his game. But I think he'd be the first to admit that the pace of training, the pace of the games, the physical, individual matchups are very, very different to what he's had to deal with in college football. And to that degree, there's an awful lot that he can improve on. So really, really happy to have him as part of the group, and, delighted to see what he can do and the potential that he has.